In this video, we'll do the derivative of x to the n another way. Actually, a new way. So delta x will be x2 minus x1. This means that x2 is equal to delta x plus x1. And delta of x to the n will be x2 to the n minus x1 to the n. And now we can replace x2 here with this. So this will be delta x plus x1 to the n minus x1 to the n. This will be the sum from k goes from 0 to n. And choose k. We are going to pick one of the terms to be n minus k and one term to be k. So we're going to pick x1 to be the n minus k term and delta x to be the k term. We're going to subtract. I'm going to do parentheses to emphasize where the sum ends, minus x1 to the n. So the k equals 0 term will be n choose 0, x1 to the n minus 0, and delta x to the 0. That would be 1, that will be 1. x1 to the n will just be x1 to the n power, and this will cancel with this term, which means that k starts at 1 now. So we have that delta of x to the n. It's the sum from k goes from 1 to n of n choose k, x1 to the n minus k. Then we have delta x to the k power. Because this term is greater than or equal to 1, in this case we can divide by delta x. So delta over delta x of x to the n. So we're getting closer to the derivative. The sum from k goes from 1 to n of n choose k, x1 to the n minus k. Then we have delta x to the k minus 1 power. And it's good that this is bigger than or equal to 0, because if this was less than 0, it'd be kind of weird. So now we can say that the derivative of x to the n will be the limit as delta x goes to 0 of delta over delta x to the n. Going to replace delta over delta x of x to the n with what we have, which is the sum from k goes from 1 to n of n choose k, x1 to the n minus k, delta x to the k minus 1 power. So I'm just going to write the first couple of terms, and then we can see what happens. So k equals 1, so we have n choose 1. n choose 1 is just n. We have x1 to the n minus 1 power, which we can write, times delta x to the 1 minus 1, which is 0. So because we're taking the limit after, we can just replace this with just 1. So that's the first term. And the rest, we can say the sum from k equals 2 to n. If n choose k, x1 to the n minus k. Then we have delta x to the k minus 1 power, like so. When we take the limit of delta x going to 0 of n times x1 times to the n minus 1, so that would just turn x1 into x. This will be n times x to the n minus 1 plus the sum from k goes from 2 to n of n choose k. We're going to bring the limit inside x. So let's just say the limit as delta x goes to 0 of x1 to the n minus k, delta x to the k minus 1, where this term is greater than or equal to 1. So if you plug in 0, you get 0 to the 1, 0 squared, 0 cubed, which means this is just 0, which means our final answer is nx to the n minus 1, which is the expected result. And that's the end of the video.